stream cutting out like that. Again, like I said, I tried solving this problem before, and so far I haven't been able to find a solution. I think literally the only solution I have is to just get a better computer that can handle streaming without cutting out every once in a while. So for now, there's really not much I can do, and just hope that it doesn't happen too often. But when it does happen, I can make sure I don't lose too much progress. I can, you know, notice when it happens, and you know, just wait until the stream comes back in a few seconds, goes back up in a few seconds, and then continue on. And it'll just be like a part C in this overall part. Again, there's really nothing I can do about that for the time being until I upgrade my hardware. This is just essentially what we'll have to deal with. Sometimes it'll work out just fine, but you know, always be that random, completely random point where it'll drop out, and I have no control over that. So just keep on going. Alright. Oof, okay. These things still taking me by surprise. Alright. Doing a bit of exploring, and we are rewarded with some resources here. You know, boxes, health, and ammo for our efforts, but gotta continue the other way. Yeah, we were originally heading to this bridge. Have to make our way through all that, essentially that gauntlet of zombies and hazardous stuff. But we finally made our way to that bridge.
Can you see the car yet?
Well, there's a car. Oh boy. But whatever that emission was caused the bridge to collapse a bit. Alright. Now we can't, even though we have the car, we can't even drive the car through without figuring out how to get across. Or how to fix this bridge, I guess. Let's see. Meantime, let's get up here if we can. You can see I'm struggling a little bit with platforming. I mean, first-person platforming, even in a great game like Half-Life 2, usually doesn't go over that well. So even little challenges like getting on top of this thing can be super tedious. And I would say in any Half-Life game, this is wherever it has you do this first-person platforming is usually the weakest segment of that experience. Alright, through? Alright. Funny thing about this is that we'll soon figure out that this bridge is essentially teetering, kind of like a seesaw, and it's a much larger scale version of like the physics puzzles that we saw in the early bits of Half-Life 2. Essentially trying to weight down one side of a seesaw, one side of a fulcrum, so that it shifts and allows this ramp to happen. And for the sake of safety here, there's when I could make sure I put all the weight on this side. So there's just a much larger version of that same physics puzzle that we saw in Half-Life 2. Alright, let's go back around this way. Hopefully we can get to that car. Might need to push these things a little bit more. just because it's going to be difficult to drive our way through. So I will push them a little bit further. Oh, not all the way off. Just wanted to be a little bit more. I guess that's why they give you a few more cars than you need, just in case you end up knocking some off. Alright, don't fall. Just need to clear the way just a tad. No, don't... Come on. Why do these cars like to fall? There's some room here. You don't have to fall off the edge. Anyway. Still enough cars to weight it down. Just want to be a little bit more clear than it was before. I know if I'm going to get on that bridge, I'm probably going to hit them. Alright, so we get a nice vehicle segment that we saw in... We haven't seen since the main Half-Life 2 game. Episode 1 didn't have these vehicle segments. Kind of felt a little odd. But if you consider the episodes as like a more complete experience, all of them put together, then this provides that that vehicle segments that we saw. All right, guess that worked out. Just plow our way through. Okay, maybe not that. Knew I was trying to stop, but would not let me. Definitely didn't want that to happen, but okay. That's fine. Try to position this correctly. Not to repeat that same mistake. Alright. Now let's get across. Keep getting caught on these cars. Alright, now let's get across. Here we go. Alright, so made it to the other side. Are they here? I think we have to let them in, right? There they are. There we go. Now we all can move on.
Great driving, Gordon.
Well done, Freeman.
So considering episode 1 and 2 as like their own game together, this vehicle segment, this vehicle here, should provide enough for both.
We scored.
Like each episode,
Oh,
in their individual or capacity, doesn't need to be an example of Half-Life 2 in a smaller form. Each episode has its own
Be wary that others may use it as well.
I can't tell you.
has its own reencapsulation of various things that Half-Life 2, the main game, did, as well as bringing their own unique gameplay elements as well. That way, each episode becomes its own thing. So it's not like it's not necessarily fair of me to say episode 1 did not have a vehicle segment, didn't make. That was the thing that was missing from it, because episode 1 needs to be episode 1. It needs to be its own thing, and it doesn't. It shouldn't be a checklist of things Half-Life vehicle segment, one of them. That would just make all the episodes and all individual story segments just too similar to each other. So episode 2 is where it's going to utilize the vehicle segments to make its own experience to itself, as well as harkening back to Half-Life 2 proper.
As easy as just driving down the road. Looks like we'll have to take a detour.
Alright. Difference here, I think, between this vehicle segment and the one we saw in Half-Life 2 is that Alyx is with us. We get to see that AI cooperation work in tandem with the vehicle. We're driving her around, and we have access to Alyx whenever necessary. We're also
A radio tower.
exploring those larger environments too.
We need to send a warning to White Forest. They've got no idea the Combine's heading their way.
Let's make a pit stop because I spotted this thing. It's like somewhat of a watchtower. There we go. Looks like I have all of this ammo anyway, so I didn't need to make that pit stop. But still, always worth exploring and trying to get as much resources as possible. The thing I like about this, the vehicle segment in Half-Life 2 and in Episode 2 is this sort of freedom of environment, the fact that we're able to get through much larger environment than what we're normally seeing, more restrictive and narrow passageways when we're on foot. This is much more freeing, and it's really cool to be able to drive through these larger environments. See how Episode 2 specifically handles driving sequences. Alright, we got to that radio tower area.
Nobody's home. Wonder how long it's been deserted. They must have a transmitter in one of these buildings.
Alright, so there's the radio tower. From here we could actually get a really nice view of the portal. Also get our, I guess, our clearest view of the wreckage of the Citadel and City 17 in the wake of that portal, destruction of the Citadel. It is a really, I guess you could say it's a cool set piece. You know, I think that word in particular is used a little bit too often these days as one of those terms that games press and developers end up using a little too often to the point where it loses its meaning a bit. But I think set piece applies here. It's just like that's exactly what it's meant to be. It's meant to be this big landmark and kind of a wow moment in terms of scenery. And also, there can't ignore the fact that when we do go to observe this, we get that little story moment, that dialogue from Alyx that we probably would not get if we ignored it and went straight to our regular objective, which I guess is to look for the station and to transmit. So, have I learned anything? These wires probably mean something. Might want to go look. The buildings will have those wires. We get in? Yeah, we can. Oh boy. Oof, that actually surprised me. But good thing about those zombies that they usually blow themselves up. Alright, so what we're looking for is in here, right? This thing? I think so.
Well, here's the transmitter. No power, though.
Uh-huh.
Let's see if we can get some electricity going.
Alright, so, second step. Or the first step. Okay, we found what we needed, but the first step in order to power that is to just gotta find where we can power that. Or rather, one of these buildings, right? Meantime, do a little bit of exploring. Only one building left, so it's probably going to be in here. I don't know if you can hear in the background there, but hearing a little bit of those very eerie noises, familiar noises that we've heard before. We know things are going to go down soon.
I'll keep a lookout while you poke around inside.
Alright, so now it's time to figure out how to power this stuff. Alright, so we got an elevator. Alright, here is... looks like this is where the power is coming from. And we have one cable. Oh, we have two cables. There we go. So what we really need to figure out is what goes to what. Can't tell exactly. I think this one might be for the elevator. Alright, gotta experiment a little bit here. I've solved this before, I know, but in a while I don't remember the solution exactly. Yeah, this cable definitely won't go here. So this cable definitely goes to here and here. The other one will not fit. This one will be suitable for this one. So one definitely goes here. The other one has to go to one of these. Try this one. Okay, I see. This one is a dead end. Here we go.
Okay, power's on up here.
Oh boy, here we go.
Gordon, hide.
And those are the noises we've been hearing.
Hunters. They're out here.
Pairing their moves.
It's on the roof. Here it comes. They're not gonna catch me off guard. Not this time. Ready for you.
And take a lot of punishment. In the case that wasn't the last of them, make sure to be prepared. Oh boy. Got these barrels, gotta use them. We can also use speed to our advantage. There it is.
To get our warning out and then keep moving. That was probably a scouting party.
All right. Yeah, a lot of excitement there. I actually really like that little shootout that we had going on here. Behind here, facing them head on, just trying to pump as much damage into them as possible. The way that this wall kind of broke apart, kind of destroying our cover, but also making it clear to return fire at the same time, and then, of course, figuring out that we can use the gravity gun as a means of hurting them as well. So, one detail about that is that sometimes there are little darts that they throw that explode after a few seconds. You can use those against them by if you pick up something with the gravity gun and have their darts hit that thing, you can when those darts are about to explode, that's when you throw it back to them, and then they take a little bit more damage that way. So the interaction with those hunters is a pretty complex one.
Okay.
Lots of ways you can approach the attack against them, as well as trying to fight against them.
Let's give it a try.
One way, of course, is to take advantage of the indoor areas. I could have done that, but I end up going for a more direct approach, just trying to do as much damage to them as possible before they destroy us.
The gravity of the situation. The survival of Earth depends on the data you carry.
Yes, I know. But the Combine, they're heading your way.
What's that? What? You're heading our way? Well, I should hope so.
Not
What was that? You're breaking up, Alyx. What?
Crap.
Oh boy.
I wonder if we got any of that. Let's get back on the road.
Visors still
Here, let me open the gate.
causing havoc, interrupting our transmission there. Alright, so as far as combat sequences goes, that's one. The fights against these hunters is one of my favorite in this episode for sure. But as of course also they're one of the more interesting enemies to fight in Half-Life 2 overall. So the way the AI works and the way you're trying to use your environment against them. But also in your favor, you're trying to use the environment to hide from them. Because they're really good at... In wide open areas, they're really good at just destroying you. But if you're able to hide from them, get inside, get protection from them indoors, while also
Let's keep going.
using your gravity gun and destroying them with heavy objects, you strategically pop in and out, dealing damage to them over time. They're one of the more fun enemies to fight against. But a lot of that comes down to the nature of their AI. They're really good at navigating the environments around the houses and finding you, spotting you, and approaching you from directions that you didn't expect. That's why. Yeah, they're a really mobile enemy. They're much faster and more capable than the standard Combine enemies we've been facing for the most part.
Hey, I know that peak. You can see it from White Forest.
For most of the Half-Life experience. So, if there's any one thing that Half-Life 2 Episode 2 has of its own, it is the hunter enemy. That's the key differentiating factor here. Oh, and here we go.
Look,
this is a
it's one of those advisor pods. Back in the Citadel, those things we saw.
star moment. There's the advisor, but no advisor in sight, or the pod. To see where the advisor went. As far as enemy types go, I think the hunter is a really good way to... Alright, we're gonna explore this barn here.
What was that?
The hunter enemy being as cool as it is a really good differentiator. One of the reasons why I think Half-Life 2 Episode 2 is one of the best single story points
There's an advisor around here someplace.
in, I guess, at least the Half-Life 2 games. If we're considering Half-Life 2 proper, Episode 1, and then Episode 2. I think the hunter as an enemy, an enemy type, ends up making Episode 2 one of the better overall or individual experiences. Then again, I at the same time also consider Half-Life 2 and the episodes kind of together as just one grand experience. So not necessarily proper, you know, to compare the individual segments to each other, but if I had to, I would say Episode 2 perhaps my favorite of all of them, just because how cool and interesting it is to fight these hunters in the environments that they're presented. That's the important part too, is that it's not just fighting the hunters, but it's also navigating the environment, and also versus how the hunters navigate the environment. You're kind of it's almost navigation versus navigation, AI versus human strategy. If it wasn't for the environments, then the hunters would be a more normal enemy. So I think it's the AI of the hunters combined with the way they're able to utilize their environments. The environments
Ford said we should kill them before they hatch.
is why they work. And well, that was just one example in which we were
Life support. What do you say, Gordon?
fighting the hunters and environment. We'll see more battles later on. We'll see how they're able to use.
Maybe I can get this.
The hunters are able to use the environments against us.
Over to you, Gordon.
Okay, so let's try this. Gravity gun. Alright. Kind of being lifted here. Still in control though, so this isn't necessarily a cutscene. It's very similar to one though. But we're still in direct control, at least of our head, but we are being pinned down by this advisor who can, like, lift things up. Control gravity or whatnot. I'm not sure what he's doing. So we can't move our bodies, but we can still direct our head around. So even here, we still have interactive control. It's still preserved. Oh boy. Yeah, that's right. Run. Lucked out there, definitely.
Gordon. Thank God you're all right. That thing was hurt. Did you see it? I can only imagine what it would have done if... Uh-oh.
Alright, here we go.
Sounds like it called its friends.
Uh-oh.
Soldiers!
Threat level adjustment. Probe. Expunge.
Right there, that's we just now picked up the crossbow. We have this almost too perfect of an environment to
Let's get to the car.
too perfect of an area to make use of that crossbow. Oh, I just missed. can't hit anything. I have to hit them dead on. Kind of a shootout between environments here. Uh-oh. Another example of fight with the hunters. See if I can use their darts against them. Alright, shoot. Alright, they're not gonna comply. Let's try and figure out what we can use against them. Alright, I think that was just one hunter, so I think that's why it was a little bit easier. Basically just had to pump damage into them. Or into that one. It was just one hunter though, it was just one. I think that worked out a little bit better in our favor. Just need to get to the car, I suppose. And just get this one. Oh, it's full. Alright, never mind. Alright, so this particular area, not the best example of a hunter fight. For sure. But I think that was just because they had one hunter with them, that was it. Let's get out of here.
Let's get out of here. Here we go again.
No. Can't really fight against it, we just have to run. Oh boy. Very reminiscent of a sequence in Half-Life 2 where we didn't have a car as our vehicle, but we did have that hoverboat, which is basically doing the same thing against us, utilizing these, dropping these balls. We're up against a chopper that was dropping these explosive balls. I think this specific sequence is supposed to harken back to that, except now we are in the car instead of the hoverboat. So one note there I just wanted to touch upon briefly is we're still within the that weapon ramp up for this game specifically. We just then picked up a new weapon. Oh boy. We'll get out of here. Picked up that new weapon. The crossbow, which is like a sniper weapon. And that environment was almost perfectly suited for that weapon, so we're still in that very similar weapon ramp up, and that's less of a concern in Half-Life 2 Episode 2 because it got a lot of that weapon ramp up done earlier on. And as we're still picking up more,
Oh crap! We may have to
gotta get out of here. The
This way.
car's on fire. Oh, so we haven't quite picked up every single weapon, but a lot of the combat sequences that, as we make our way through, still have to be somewhat designed around that progression of weapons. Oh no, lost that guy.
Safe here. If you want to start chipping away at that chopper, I'll poke around and see if I can find any medkits.
So now it's going to be a fight against this chopper, I suppose.
need cash.
We can use these against it. There we go. Where is it? Missed. Missed. See how this experience works out. Very interesting sort of come on, drop more of those. No, you wanna. Alright, got it. Always satisfying to destroy the choppers that have been hounding you down. I think this one is
Threw their minds right back at 'em. Well,
compared to the similar
who's with
fight against
We need to get back on
the
the
chopper
road, but
in
my
Half-Life
engine's
2.
shot to hell.
I feel like
I don't
episode 2
suppose
that
you have any
handles it a
trouble
little bit
working on
better.
cars.
I mean, one of the biggest criticisms of Half-Life 2 proper is just how long you are being hounded by that chopper, and you're in that. Specifically, the hoverboat sequence is what a lot of people end up not liking. I guess just because of how long it drags on. I think if it was much shorter, more people would like it. I mean, I think I liked it. I liked it a lot more than most people did. That hoverboat sequence, where you're being hounded by the chopper and flying through, or sailing, I suppose, boating your way through those large environments, those canals, while that chopper is hunting you down. And it takes quite a while before you gain the capacity to fight back against that chopper. I think that specifically is the reason why people don't like that segment, because how long it drags on. But here we see they kind of they're almost addressing that sequence directly. We're seeing we get a short chase where the chopper is hunting us down and dropping those balls, just like what they did in Half-Life 2. And then we get to that payoff right away where we're able to take it down. So compared to the same sequence in Half-Life 2, I think this one's done a lot better, just because it's much more succinct, much more concise. We get that exciting chase, and then finally that payoff where we're able to take it down much quicker than in Half-Life 2.
He's always up for it. Right, Gordon?
We're seeing that the shortness of this Half-Life 2 episode 2, because it is a smaller episode, is meant to be, because this whole thing is an episodic experience, not between episode 1 and episode 2 at least, that the experience is designed to be shorter They have to work around it being more concise, right? And that shortness of the shortness of the experience is actually ended up working in its favor and making almost all segments, all individual levels of the game that much better because of how they are. Well, that's kind of weird. This was like transparent for a little while. Because of how they are forced to, or they're forced to not go long. Rather, like in the Half-Life 2 game proper, because they were making a much larger, grander experience that lasted like 20 hours or so. A lot of the individual levels and a lot of the individual levels sequences in that game can drag on a bit too long. Essentially there was nothing to punish bad pacing, moments of bad pacing in the larger experience, where in the episodic experience, because in essence it has to be by definition a much shorter experience, that it forces their hand and forces all individual sequences to be shorter, more concise, and better paced. So in a much smaller experience like this, it is more difficult for them to make sequences that have pacing problems, essentially. And of course, it can still happen. I think we saw some more slower paced or poorly paced. I don't want to say slower paced as equivalent to bad pacing, because there are times where a slow pace works better. I just want to say, right, these cars forgot that they sink. I want to make a distinction between bad pacing or poor pacing and slow pacing. Sometimes a slow pace is a better option. Okay, I think we got to go up there. My point is that because of the nature of the episodic experience, forcing the whole experience to be shorter and then individual levels and sequences within it in turn to be shorter, pacing problems are much less often an issue. And to go along with that point, of course, they can still be an issue. We saw sometimes in episode 1 where the pacing wasn't that strong. I think mainly goes around. I actually can't quite recall right now. I think if I had to point to one thing where the pacing wasn't that strong in episode 1 was probably... I know they were there, I just can't point it out right now. Like, if I go back and play that, I can point to it much more easily. Many of the sequences when we were separated from Alyx, I think, weren't that strong. In any case, it's hard for me to think of one episode 2 or episode 1 because of how, by nature, the smaller experience forces it to have better pacing in general, or forces it to keep having a brisk pacing. Oh, right, right. If I had to point to any single area where the pacing isn't that strong, it's probably that last sequence where we're in that train yard. No! I should have stayed behind the car, shouldn't I? Yeah, when we're in that train yard and we're having to transport the people. I think that was probably the worst sequence in that game, and the one with the worst pacing in that game. That's what I was thinking of. But all in all, the pacing was very brisk and worked very well in episode 1 because of its episodic nature. Brevity is key to good storytelling more often than not. Okay, now we can get this out. There we go. Now we can take it out. As far as episode 2 is concerned, for the most part, has followed that same theory. Pacing has been very well done. Worked in its favor. Oh boy. Where these combines come from? Quickly regroup here and take a little breather, gather resources. We're trying to solve the problem of those guns. Alright, just gotta keep on going this way through this little minefield here. There we go. Keep my head down as well. Can't pop my head out to fight the combine, because that happens. Like, they end up destroying me. The guns end up destroying me. All right, so we're seeing the interesting interaction there. The guns, of course, aren't shooting the combine because combine are the ones controlling the guns. There we go. We can work our way around back here. Bombing run, essentially. Alright, so now these guys were controlling the guns. Oh, I see what you have to do. The guns are automated, I see. Just have to sabotage it like that. And there we go. Solve that little problem. A lot of the sequence in this game can be solved, or rather, are aided greatly because it is an episode, and it's just by definition a much shorter experience. If there's any one part that you don't end up not liking, you don't have to put up with it for long. I guess that's ultimately, I guess, what my point was. My point was that if there is ever a problem, because the experience overall is fairly short, even the less interesting segments and sequences in the game don't bog you down so much. Whereas in a larger experience like Half-Life 2, if there are any sequences that you don't like, which a lot of people point to that hoverboat sequence where the chopper is hunting you down,
We've hidden a bunch of these things out there
they end up
to
meandering
signal
for much
emergency
longer.
stashes. So keep an eye out. When you see your dashboard light up, you're gonna want to stop and investigate.
I'll fill
And
you in on the road, Gordon.
Thanks again, you guys.
the experience suffers because of that.
To thank you.
Or it suffers longer than it needs to suffer. If it was better paced, then it wouldn't need to suffer that long. Alright, actually I'm gonna end up cutting the playthrough right here. I think that was enough for this part. And even though this part will end up being like in 3 segments, part A, part B, and part C, I think. Probably just one. Yeah, we'll see what it looks like in the archives and then upload it to YouTube. But I think it's going to be part A, part B, and part C. And again, I apologize for stream cutting out like that. It's something that is still beyond my control and ultimately down to the weakness of my hardware. I just need to upgrade that stuff eventually. For the most part, though, streaming usually works, and most days I can stream without any issues. There's some days that'll end up happening regardless of what I do. In any case, yeah, this is a good point to transition or end this sequence so that we can begin in a new part for the next stream. Next stream we'll start off right in this car and gun in our next leg in the journey of this, or in our journey to White Forest is what they're trying to get to. Like Gordon and Alyx trying to get to White Forest. This is the next leg in the journey. So some interesting stuff. The big thing there was that cutscene. So much of my discussion was focused on that cutscene and wrapping my head around it, deciding how it works and whether it does work, succeeds, ends up being good or not. I think definitely ends up working out quite well, despite being a traditional cutscene. But of course, you can go back to that discussion there. I don't need to reiterate that. Then continued on discussing the various sequences we saw afterwards. Lots of things in this episode. Yeah, compare that to Half-Life 2. In the same span of time, we've progressed so much. It seems like it's been we are so far away from that area with the Vortigaunts and the antlions. It's like, again, it goes back down to that brisk pacing, that concise design, because it is an episode, it is a single episode. It makes everything run brisker. It feels like, even though we haven't played that long, just a couple hours here, we've progressed a whole lot. And there's of course still more to go. Episode 2 is, I think, the longer episode compared to episode 1. Episode 2 is slightly longer, but still overall a short, nice, succinct episode. So shouldn't be too many more parts left in this playthrough, but yeah, still more to go. So I think that'll do for today. Discussed enough. Don't need to bring up any more stuff. So I'll just say thank you very much for watching and putting up with the times the stream went down. I hope that didn't cause too much trouble for you getting the stream back online. For now, I'll say yeah, thanks for watching. If you want to watch the archives of my stream up until this point, go over to my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/YamsterSam, and if you will, you can also follow me on Twitter @YamsterSam, and of course you can watch me live over on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/YamsterSam. So with that, I will see you in the next part. Later.